Please pray with me. May these words that I speak this day be grounded in my soul, encouraged by the God presence in me, and may these words that you hear be captured by your soul, enlivened by the God presence in you. Amen. Behold, I make all things new. That verse is from the book of Revelations, second last chapter, chapter 21. And it was the theme for the General Council that took place in Corner Brook, Newfoundland a couple of weeks ago. Behold, I make all things new. We say this, but my experience generally, and at General Council in particular, is that we don't actually believe it. This second to last chapter is in the final book of the New Testament, which is 2,000 years old. That chapter begins with the vision for a new heaven and a new earth, where the home of God is no longer apart from, but among us. This was a leap of faith for first century people. But in 2015, we should be able to embrace this notion of God among us easily. Science has given us the wisdom to know that God is not separate from, but the very ground of all that is. Still, we struggle to embrace a new thing. General Council for me was disappointing in this sense. Even with that theme before us, even facing huge financial crisis, even facing growing numbers of church closures, even facing steadily declining attendance numbers, even facing our inability to appeal to younger generations, still, it seems we could not embrace something new. Instead, after 7 long days, we agreed to eliminate presbyteries in favor of a 3-court system, but simply transferred all the work to regional councils with no understanding of how we will pay for it. We also passed by with 60% in favor, a proposal that we move from 3 orders of ministry, ordained, diaconal, and designated lay, to 1 order of ministry. We approved that, knowing it will be soundly defeated in congregational and presbytery remits, which will take 2 years. And we embraced the new creed, written 47 years ago, at the beginning of our decline, with not a single solitary mention or reference to our later creed, the 2006 Song of Faith. I came away from the meeting thinking that our theme should have been, Behold, I make things just the way they have always been. And a lot of our time could have been better spent trying to find that verse in the Bible. But that said, the meeting was not a waste of time. I learned some valuable things, both from some of the speakers there, and also from reflection on many of the decisions we didn't make. The most valuable learning was not something new as much as it was a confirmation for me of the importance of acting on one particular word. And this time the word isn't love, which I've been using over and over for months now. It wasn't love this time. The word was intuition. Intuition. Intuition is not a new thing. In fact, it has been part of the human experience since the dawn of consciousness. It is important, however, because intuition comes from a deeper place within us than our thoughts or our feelings. It comes from a gut place. And everyone possesses intuition, without exception, but we often struggle to acknowledge those gut feelings and act on them. Intuition has served us well as a species. Intuition guided generation after generation about how to make decisions and understand the world when knowledge was unknown or unreliable. Intuition was at work in the creation of our Genesis creation story. Intuition led Moses into the wilderness. Intuition empowered the Hebrew prophets to speak out for justice. At General Council, I heard the voices of our First Nations brothers and sisters present there tell us that all things are connected, that we are kin with bears and salmon and trees and plants and rocks and mountains and stars. These people which had their spirituality crushed by our system are reclaiming that spirituality that has given them this intuitive truth for thousands and thousands of years. Their ancient intuition about our connectedness, about the nature of the universe, is now simple fact based on the knowledge that we have gained from science. Intuition guided Jesus. He knew in his gut that love is the way, but it needed to be an unconditional love. He had no way of proving it, but his actions of unconditional love changed his world, at least for a time. The intuitive nature of Jesus' mission grounds the story of the Syrophoenician woman, which I shared with the children this morning. Jesus saw his mission as being for his own people. I suspect that was not out of elitism, but rather because he hadn't likely even thought about the mission being bigger than his own nation. But this foreigner, this faith-filled woman's intuition saw no reason to limit love to a single nation. And Jesus readily agrees. He intuitively knew that she was right. It is intuition that guides James in the reading this morning that Red shared, calling on the early followers to pay attention to their actions. Within a single generation since Jesus' death, Christians were already acting from their heads, creating limiting laws, rather than from the deeper place of love's intuition. Beliefs were taking hold, and they soon lost their love compass in the struggle to be right. James was calling them to live and act from a deeper place, that gut place, in every moment of their lives. And intuition took me to Corner Brook and the meeting of the General Council. Something in my gut last February was telling me that I needed to be there. It was not about ego. Far from it. Rather, I was trusting without knowing for sure that something would be revealed if I could just stay open to the movement of the Spirit. The new revealed to me there was the power of intuition grounded in love to change the world. And further, the ineptness of belief grounded in the need to be right to change the world. I was being called to let go of ego in all its forms and let my soul-deep intuition, the very Spirit of God, find its way into my life and to guide my journey. So do what you need to do with all of that. Perhaps it's already forgotten. Because the important part is what I need to say now. Because the epiphany I have had out of all of this is the most important thing that I feel I need to share today. This epiphany is in finally putting into words what I have been wrestling with for some time, and I have General Council, our First Nations brothers and sisters, and Michael Dowd to thank for the words. Michael Dowd, in his book, Thank God for Evolution, which I'm going to do as a book study this fall, offers a new and exciting way to imagine, or to intuit, if you will, a future where science and religion are truly one. He says, in fact, that facts are God's native tongue. This epiphany is why I have come to see that leaning more deeply into our intuition is critical for each of us and the world we are part of. And my epiphany is this: faith and beliefs are opposites. Faith and trust are synonym. Faith and beliefs are opposites. Faith and trust are the same. Dowd says this: trust is what other animals do pretty much instinctually. When some difficulty occurs in nature, a drought, flood, or hurricane, other creatures don't make it mean anything. They don't say to themselves, "Damn, why did this have to happen to me?" They just accept the situation as it is, trust, and then make the best of it by being in action. Faith helps us reclaim our birthright as animals. Through faith or trust, we experience communion with God, the same intimacy our ancestors enjoyed in the garden for hundreds of thousands or perhaps even millions of years as hominids prior to language. Now that we live in a world shaped so extensively by language, faith or trust is not automatic. It needs to be nurtured. Faith enables us to move beyond the beliefs born of language and thus to receive God's guidance directly, intuitively, as we pursue our great work, doing our part to better the world in ways big or small, to leave a positive legacy that lives on after we are gone. That is exactly the work that Jesus was about. And it was intuited. Let me give you an example of this faith as trust rather than belief notion, because I'm sure some of you are probably trying to figure out what I'm saying. So here's an example. I might believe in an afterlife, that there is a place that we will go after death. But I believe this with my head. And I may change the nature of this afterlife from time to time, and will often doubt the belief itself. Belief limits my capacity to grow spiritually because I close the door to unfolding possibility. Rather, I would say that I trust deeply the eternal presence of the Spirit of God. And because of that trust, I know that I am part of a greater evolving, a greater unfolding that is more than the life I know in this present moment. This trust increases my capacity to grow spiritually because I open the door to unfolding possibility. In this way, it is trust and not belief that is faithful. This is not to say that what we have believed is somehow wrong, but rather that we need to recognize that what we know about the world has changed dramatically since our biblical stories were written. Dowd says this: earlier generations cannot be faulted for not knowing what we know. God reveals truth to each and every generation and culture in ways that make sense at the time and place, given the psychological, technological, political, economic, and social realities of the day, as well as the landscape, climate, and other natural factors that shape the awareness of the inhabitants. In a diverse, developmental cosmos, there is ultimately no privileged position theologically, no place and time from which we can be sure to have God's absolute truth. It is erroneous to believe that God stopped revealing truth, vital to human well-being and destiny, when people thought the world was flat, only a few thousand years old, and at the center of the universe. We are at a critical crossroads, my friends. My gut tells me that we are being called into a new thing, a new way. We are being called away from flat earth Christianity, from flat earth religion in all its forms, which has served us reasonably well for most of the last 2,000 years. And we are being called into an evolutionary Christianity and an evolutionary religion system around the world, which embraces the intuitive nature of our ancient stories, the evolving scientific knowledge, and our own intuitive nature in our time and place. My intuition is pointing me in the direction that Dowd, Sanguin, Swim, Barry, and many others are already seeing. The United Church of Canada as a denomination has chosen to stay the course. Each congregation will need to carefully, prayerfully, and hopefully, intuitively decide how to go forward. Staying the course will be the death of the United Church as we know it. Changing the course will also be the death of the United Church as we know it. But we are a people who trust that with death comes resurrection. We have always been that people. So whichever path we choose, love needs to be our center. Love needs to be our purpose. Love needs to be our vision. I wonder what your gut is saying to you.